All right, welcome to Fireside Chats with Brad. We're live today on Facebook, and we're excited to bring a special episode to you. We're calling it The Baseball Show. Man, we are living in some unprecedented times. These are kind of unique, foreign, weird, if you will, times where work has come home for many people. Social distancing, isolation, quarantine are words that we're using on a regular basis. And so, what we've wanted to do is bring some content to inspire you and encourage you. So, today, it's kind of a special bonus lunchtime episode. Appreciate many of you joining us. So, feel free to hop on if you would. Go ahead and share this live episode of Fireside Chats with Brad. It'll help us reach a larger audience and bring some other baseball fans into the discussion. Matter of fact, we want you guys to be a part of the discussion today. So love to hear from you in the Facebook comments. One of the questions we're asking today is who is the most hated team in the major leagues these days? For years, it was the evil empire, the New York Yankees. Admittedly, because they were great. They've won so many World Series. But man, in recent months, the Houston Astros were proved to be not just a mild cheating team, but a significant technologically cheating team, stealing the signs, sending in signals so that the batters would know. And so it created quite a bit of a scandal until the COVID-19 pandemic. So why don't you let us know in the comments, do you hate the Yankees more or the Astros more? We'd love to hear what your comments are about that. So today I am talking with my good friend, Matt Scheuneman. Matt, welcome to Fireside Chats with Brad, the baseball episode.
Man, it's so good to be here. I am so pumped. I've been talking to my wife like all week about this conversation just because it's like so nice outside. It's sunny. You just want to be in a ballpark, but unfortunately we can't. So we're resorted to this. And like I've been seeing so many people watch old YouTube videos of baseball, and I'm right there with them. And so I'm just pumped to even talk about it for a little bit. So thanks for having me.
Well, I'm glad to have you here. I hope Emily wasn't too bothered by all the baseball talk. But 20 days ago was supposed to be opening day for the baseball season. Almost 3 weeks. There's no baseball. That's a little bit of sadness, but that's going to be the last bit of sadness on today's episode, because while we might not be able to watch the 2020 season just yet, hopefully maybe in the next few weeks, maybe later next month, we could find baseball coming back. We're going to talk about baseball because baseball is, America's pastime. It's where what front porches and sports bars were meant to serve as a place for us to talk about our favorite sports. So we're going to talk about baseball today. Glad that you're here with us. If you're joining us again, coming in now, love to hear your baseball thoughts in the comments. Today we're going to hit 3 topics.
Yep.
In addition to our poll, most hated team, Yankees or Astros. Here are our 3 topics. In our first segment, we're going to debate, more of a friendly style debate. We're going to share our all-time greatest baseball lineups from catcher all the way around the diamond. We're going to fill out the 9 positions and include the DH and name our all-time greatest starting pitcher. We'd love to hear what your all-time lineup would be. We're also going to talk about what we feel like is the best baseball movie of all time. And then we're going to round out our conversation with our favorite ballpark experience. Love to hear what your favorite ballpark experience is. Maybe a park that you've been to, if you've went to Wrigley or Yankee or one of those stadiums, or maybe just your favorite thing at a ballpark, some Cracker Jacks, a hot dog, whatever it might be. But before we jump into that, Matt, how did you become a lover of baseball? What's your story?
Man, my journey has been slow. I did not grow up as a kid playing much outside of our church, like softball leagues, if you remember those, and just like the slow pitch, or at least the lofting of the ball, and then them cranking it out of the ballpark. My dad was a part of those and stuff, but obviously, as you can probably tell, I'm a Tiger fan from Detroit. I didn't grow up there or anything. My dad did, and so he kind of brought that to the house. actually his favorite player. Found out that was his favorite player, but he died last week. Al Kaline, named Mr. Tiger.
Oh, wow.
So shout out to that era, Anyway, and so kind of had it there, but then also, in the mid '90s, Atlanta Braves were like hot. They were super good. I think they won the World. I don't know when they won the World Series, but they won it sometime in there, didn't they? In '95. And so that became a big thing in the South because that's the only team that the South loves, is like Atlanta Braves or St. Louis Cardinals or your Cincinnati Reds. But I was kind of the oddball that grew up on the Tigers. So my dad had this tape of like the '84 season when they won. And I just remember such cool names even in the baseball genre. So like this one guy, Al Kaline's named Mr. Tiger, but then also they're like, their manager at the time was named Sparky Anderson. I mean, like, what kind of cool names are this? Babe Ruth, Sparky Anderson, Mickey Mantle. I mean, just like if you have a baseball name, like you won the lottery. I think. I don't know. I don't know how to get these cool names, man.
Yogi.
Yogi Berra. Yes.
Lots of, and then anyway, we'll get into the lineups in a bit, but yeah, I love that,
Yeah. So that's my journey.
Yeah. I grew up, I'm a baseball guy. I grew up playing since I was a little kid, played all the way into college. Matter of fact, still have my Mizuno Mintage college glove. Played a little small college baseball for a bit. Lost to the University of Tennessee 7-2. That was kind of a fun highlight. Love playing, play catcher and shortstop. And then after college, coached baseball for a couple of years, coached high school baseball for a couple of years, but recently have also gotten into softball because my daughter, who loves baseball, is also a fast pitch softball player. Matter of fact, wearing her team's hat. And
Nice.
Riley was driving. Riley's my 11-year-old daughter. We're driving down the road the other day, and she said, "Brad," or she said, "Didn't say Brad."
She did not say Brad.
That's how our relationship is like that. We're just on a first name basis. She just calls me Brad. But I'm driving down the road. She says, "Dad, you know how some people say that Disney is magical?" And well, you know what? I'll let her finish the rest of the story. Riley, she's right here. She's in her Reds outfit.
What's up, Riley?
She embraced the Cincinnati Reds like her dad. Riley, why don't you share for viewers all around the world, or at least all around Knoxville, what's magical to you?
So I just love going to the ballpark, eating a soft pretzel, smelling the dirt on the diamond-shaped field, the crack of the bat, smell of the balls, the Major League Baseball players throwing you balls from the bullpen. I mean, it's a great experience.
There you go. From the mouth of babes. And so when you're driving down the road and your daughter says, "Dad, you know how some people say Disney's magical?" To me, there's nothing as magical as a major league ballpark. I almost had to pull over. I got so emotionally overwhelmed. It's a great moment. You getting a chance? You've got your kids are a little younger than mine. You getting a chance to get your kids into the baseball fever?
Yeah. But I don't know if you need to just call it quits on the whole dad thing. I think you've won and just kind of cash it in there, because that moment is probably the biggest win as a dad. Now that's not probably true, but as far as sports wise, it's the biggest.
Yeah. Well, I agree. I feel like the raise them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord is what that passage meant.
I mean, they're equal, right? I mean, it's just it's equal footing of what you were doing just then. It was.
All right. Maybe we're going a little too far there. All right. So here we go.
No. Wait, let me say real quick.
Tell me what you're doing.
I did take my son to a Tennessee game so Vols were playing the Gamecocks, which are my wife's grew up in South Carolina, went to school there. And so we always try to go to those kind of rivalry games. And so he comes, and he's 2 at the time. And no joke, this kid sits and pays attention to 3 full innings of baseball. And I'm like, he's sitting in my lap, and I'm like, this is heaven. This is what it's like. I can't imagine anything better. And so it was just one of those moments. Yeah.
That's pretty epic. Awesome. Yeah. Well, let's jump into it without further delay. We're going to talk a little bit about our greatest all-time lineups. And so we're going to start with the position of catcher. And so, Matt, I'm going to let you go first. You're the guest on Fireside Chats. A reminder, share the broadcast if you're just joining us. Which team do you hate more, the Yankees, the Astros right now, whatever it is? But we're talking greatest lineups of all time. So we're going to begin with the position of catcher. Matt, in your estimation, the greatest all-time catcher in baseball history?
Gosh, this is so hard because when you try to look at all of the players, they're all like everyone's batting over 300. They all have these amazing Golden Gloves awards, and so it's almost like you just kind of have to like pick of those. But
there are going to be no bad players on this list.
Right.
These are the best people to ever do this on planet Earth.
So a little bit of my Tiger bias is coming out here, and I'm gonna throw a kind of a curveball, pun intended, of naming Ivan Pudge Rodriguez as my favorite catcher of all time. And I think that he's even like top 3 or 4 of all time. Honestly, like you have one, I think, that's probably going to beat mine as far as stats. And then you got like Yogi Berra, who's probably like the best, but he's what kind of pulled me into further Tigers fandom when he was playing with the Tigers in I think the early 2000s or late 90s. And so like, he's my favorite catcher, and his stats like back him up.
So Yvonne,
whatever, Pudge
was phenomenal. He made catching cool again, I think, because first of all, he was extraordinarily handsome. Like he was like, he had this kind of Latin vibe, and like he really made, I mean, other people did it, but he made the throw to second from the knees famous.
Oh my gosh.
And then he was so muscular. I mean, he had a little stretch there where he was phenomenal. I love the pick for Pudge. Big fan.
Well, and he finally won, like, and also some of the stats of this is like, if you got to win a World Series, and he didn't do it with the Tigers, but he did, I think, eventually with the Marlins. And so like, he kind of got his fandom, like his status there. So,
yeah. Well, you know, the unique thing about catchers is very few of them have long extended careers at such a physically demanding position. Many transition to first base, but here is my all-time greatest catcher. And I'm combining hitting, defense, leadership, and kind of how I'm thinking about it is not only the peak of the person's career, but also the totality of their career, and with a little bit, not a complete focus, but a little bit of focus on their postseason performance. But for me, the Big Red Machine's preeminent leader, Johnny Bench, would be my greatest catcher of all time. Yogi Berra's numbers are phenomenally. Now he's hilarious. I don't know if he was really the goofy guy that he was in real life. So we'll give some super props to Yogi Berra. But here's some things about Johnny Bench. He hit .533 with 2 homers in the '76 World Series when the Big Red Machine swept the Yankees. 2-time MVP, and he was the leader of that legendary Big Red Machine. And admittedly, you might notice the Cincinnati Reds hat here in the background, so I do have a little bit of a bias to the Reds. But Johnny Bench, my all-time greatest catcher.
Can you say, what was his stat again? 533?
In the '76 World Series, he hit .533 and 2 home runs. He hit a home run in 1 out of every 4 games in his postseason career. He was dominant in the NLCS and WLS.
So I just want to, like, that's incredible stat. Like, for those that don't know the baseball, .533 is like basically half of your times at bat you're hitting a hit. Like that's unheard of statistic.
Especially for catchers, because catchers have a disadvantage. The physical toll of playing catcher. Typically the catcher doesn't bat for a high average or power, but Johnny Bench did both of those.
Incredible.
All right, let's move to first base. So who do you have as all-time favorite / best first baseman?
I have, and I think we may share with this. So, and my most hated team is actually the cap I'm wearing, even though the Astros have a very tight running. The reason I'm wearing this cap is because my wife is a Yankees fan, and it is one of the harder things in our.
Were you aware of that in your engagement period?
Yeah, and I just had to, like, you know, there's things that you can't find the perfect thing. I mean, everyone has, you know, flaws and sins in their lives, and so.
Wow. Well, Emily, if you're watching this, I would like for you to post in the comments who your most hated person on planet Earth is right
Oh,
now.
please don't do that. Anyway, okay, my favorite catcher or pitch. No, we're at first base. Is I think what did I put? Yeah, Albert Pujols. I think he has even recently. Is he still playing with the
Technically
Angels?
still active. He is certainly in the swan song of his career,
That's for sure.
but still
But that
active
guy,
for the Anaheim Angels.
and I think that he's also kind of brought. I love players that bring a freshness to the game and that and get people involved into it. And so I think he's done that from a fandom standpoint, but I think his stats, even as a first baseman, are probably up there. And I think the other one that I think would be in rivalry is Lou Gehrig, but I mean, but Pujols is my guy.
Yeah, so no argument for me. My number one all-time greatest first baseman, Albert Pujols. His career is so long now. You know, he obviously played his most famous days with the St. Louis Cardinals, and I said Anaheim Angels a minute ago. They've changed names 3 times in the last 6 years. They're now the Los Angeles Angels.
Right.
And so he's played the last few years for the Los Angeles Angels, which have not had a great team. But his prime, first of all, his prime was probably for about 12 years. The guy was not just a power hitter. He could hit for average. So he's a plus 300 average hitter. He could spray the ball. You couldn't shift Albert Pujols in his prime. He could hit with power to opposite field. He could pull. He could hit for doubles. In his younger age, he was a threat on the bases. And so here is some stats for you. For 10 years, for an entire decade, Albert Pujols hit at least 300 and at least 30 home runs and 100 RBIs. That is a Major League Baseball record for consecutive years, and the only person to have even made it to double digits in their career with those numbers, not consecutively, but just in their career, is Babe Ruth. That's how good Albert Pujols was and has been at first base.
You put a baseball player in the same league in name as Babe Ruth. I mean, he's all like Hall of Famer immediately. And so that's incredible. And you've done your homework, man. Like, I just want to say, like, you got the homework down, the statistics.
Hey, I've got to bring it.
Glad.
Baseball is my thing. Baseball is the statistics game. All right. Second baseman.
So mine is kind of it is statistics based, but it's also just the importance of what he was to the game. And so that's Jackie Robinson, 42.
That's a good pick.
So he broke the color barrier. And if you've seen some of the movies, just his impact and his kind of steadfastness in the point of just playing ball. And I mean, yes, it was a color thing, but it was also like, it was just the sport that he loved, and he just played it his heart out. And his performance gave him like notoriety and respect, and he just changed the game forever. And now we have all these races that are just a part of the game, and it's just made it such a vibrant and awesome sport. And so like, I think for that, not alone, but such a big piece of what he's done to change the game forever. So he's my second baseman.
Man, that's such a great pick. I've got a bit to say about Jackie Robinson, but let me start with who I put in the slot as my greatest second baseman of all time, and it's Rogers Hornsby. Now, Rogers Hornsby goes way back, about 100 years, but if Ted Williams had not played, and Ted Williams is largely regarded as the best hitter, average power, all of that for longevity, I think if it had not been for Ted Williams, Rogers Hornsby would be known as the best all-time hitter. He hit over 400 in 3 different seasons, playing second baseman, won a couple of World Series. But to the Jackie Robinson point, I put a little asterisk next to Rogers Hornsby because I want you, Matt, and our audience to consider this. Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier here, integrated baseball in 1947 in the midst of Jim Crow. Yes. But he did so at age 28. And so there's 2 factors I think that we need to consider in honoring Jackie Robinson. So not only does he become in 1947 the first African-American baseball player, others followed him the following season, but he had to play, and he batted over 300, had nearly 200 hits. But he had to do that underneath the day in, day out pressure of being the image icon of a civil rights movement in sports. And he didn't get his start till he's 28. So what if, imagine what if Jackie Robinson enters into Major League Baseball at 22, has an extra 6 season, and doesn't have to play under the threat of his family, his welfare, and the pressure in Jim Crow America. Jackie Robinson, with my asterisk, also included on my all-time second baseman list.
Man, it's some of these stories of like the what ifs, I think, that just kind of get you with baseball is and how their stats could just continue to rise. I mean, if that scenario played out and he started at 22, maybe in the 80s, he probably could have been the best of all time, like no matter position. And so that's just kind of cool to think about.
Yeah, what a guy. I love that annually in the Major League Baseball, everyone wears the 42 for one game. All right, we're moving around the diamond. We're at third base. Matt, all-time greatest third baseman.
I was on the fence, but I think I'll have to go with Mike Schmidt. The dude, like, I'm just looking at some of his stats just because I feel like incompetent, not having as much homework done as you. But like, the guy was a Hall of Famer, 3-time MVP, 12th-time All-Star, like won the World Series in the 80s, 10-time Golden Glove. Like the Golden Glove piece, I think we talk about bats a lot, but like the defense of third base, to get 10 times the Golden Glove award is pretty big. And so I honor him with my old school Phillies hat. And so just I went with another. I was almost going to go with another guy that I think you might pick, but that's my all-time third baseman.
Listen, that's really a hard pick to argue with. And I just want to warn you, one, Emily Scheuneman has joined the viewership. And so make sure that you keep your language clean, Matt. And you're
respect
speaking,
the Yankees.
You're speaking well of the Yankees temporarily. So just a little warning there. But yeah, Mike Schmidt, amazing. I remember him in my early days of youth. I'm going to just flat out admit I put on the third base line a nostalgic pick, because this guy was the best third baseman in Major League during my latter part of my high school into the college years, and that was Chipper Jones.
Yep.
So just total admission of a era bias there. But interesting, Chipper Jones is the only Major League Baseball player, only switch hitter in Major League Baseball history to bat 300 and hit 400 home runs. Chipper Jones, the heart and soul of the lineup of the Atlanta Braves in the 90s and 2000s, my favorite and best third baseman of all time.
I love that pick. That's who I was going to go with, just because of the nostalgia of myself too. Like the mid 90s Braves, man, like they were just, I think they could go down in some of the best baseball teams. And so that was a fun season.
If they would have had a little bit more offense to go with, probably the best starting pitching lineup for about an 8-year stretch, they probably could have come away with more than one World Series, but that's history. All right, let's move to shortstop. We're about halfway through our all-time greatest lineup. Who have you got playing the sixth position?
I'll respect the Yankees in this one because I picked Derek Jeter as the best shortstop. There's probably plenty of other good ones. He's kind of the most recent that just stick out, but also because he has one of the coolest nicknames of all time, being called Mr. November, and just his way he played in the playoffs. The dude had a love for a game, and he could steal bases, and he just he covered so much area in his shortstop play. He's a solid player, man. And so that was just a fun guy to watch. I hate that eras go by and they have to retire and they're gone, because he was a fun guy to follow.
Derek Jeter was maybe the first New York athlete in the era of the modern technology era. I mean, where you had to face such day in, day out scrutiny as a New York player. I mean, it's always been intense. But he was there was just never drama with Derek Jeter. He showed up. It's hard to argue with Derek Jeter. I think he's going to be in everyone's list. So consistent. But my greatest shortstop of all time is known as Mr. Ironman. And I think sometimes because he played in so many consecutive games and that's become his notoriety, we forget that he was a beast at the plate, and he was the first. He paved the road for Derek Jeter and A-Rod, even though A-Rod eventually switched to third. But Cal Ripken Jr. was an anomaly in that he was a 6'3" shortstop, and like no one played shortstop that was big and powerful for the most of the history of baseball. But then Cal Ripken Jr. changed it, was incredible at the plate, and then of course had his enormous run where it's just not even probably ever going to be done again in modern sports, where he played whatever it was, 2,600 plus games consecutively without taking a single day off. Cal Ripken Jr., all-time great shortstop.
That's a great pick. I remember him and his name being, again, I'm big on names, I guess, but like people talked about him all the time. That dude was a stud. Like I can't even think about, like, I just remember people talking, not even like sports people, but like people around me. And even being in Knoxville, like we don't talk about baseball a ton, but that name was talked about a ton. And so that's a good pick.
Yeah. My favorite shortstop, just to shout out, would have been Barry Larkin back in the Reds era, in the 90 Reds. But man, Cal Ripken, he was so good. All right, we're going to move from infield to outfield. So we've got 3 positions left plus the DH. All-time great left fielder. Who you got, Matt?
Oh man, you know the names that are on this list that you have to choose from.
It's so hard.
I will give, and this may be a controversial pick, as an honorable mention. I'll give some credit to Barry Bonds before the steroid era happened. I remember, I mean, that guy, like when he was was he at the Pirates first before the Giants? But like,
young Barry Bonds and Bobby Bonilla were rock stars in the early 90s Pirates. Little fact here. They got their butts whipped by the 1990s Cincinnati Reds, but whatever. Anyways, early Barry Bonds. Yeah.
Tip of the cap for the Reds. But yes, so I mean, like, but I think the most famous left fielder that I'll probably have to go with, because he just has stats that still compete with everybody, is the great Bambino himself, Babe Ruth. I mean, you can't talk about baseball without him. And so I know that there's probably stats there that like probably compete, but when you have a guy that is like so famous in that regards, like he's got to be a part of your lineup at some point.
You know, it would really be difficult to have a lineup that doesn't include Babe Ruth, although preview mine didn't. I'm glad yours did though. The only reason is
we may have to talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
I can talk about
my case is because Babe Ruth, the competition era that he played against, and it's not so much Babe Ruth. It's because I'll share with everybody in a bit. I think we're watching right now the greatest baseball player of all time if he doesn't get injured. But Babe Ruth. I mean, he starts out as a pitcher and then moves to the outfield because so that he can his batting was just too prolific to limit him to the pitching rotations. Babe Ruth, what can you say?
Yeah.
He is, for someone from 100 years ago to still be the most famous baseball player ever. That says something about who he was. Mm-hmm. My greatest left fielder though is Ted Williams. Ted, famous for batting .407 and for really becoming one of the first like architects of teaching hitting. So Ted Williams kind of gave way to Pete Rose, who gave way to Tony Gwynn, and just the art of hitting. But my best left fielder of all time, probably the best hitter of all time, Ted Williams.
Yeah, that's good. I think in there like a recent documentary on him.
Yeah.
Was it
like
PBS
the cryo? There are talks about what if you could cryo his body or whatever. It was so weird. I don't know what.
Right, that's a little weird. But I thought that was a pretty good like discussion of how good he was recently on a documentary. I mean, that guy, that's a great pick.
Yeah. All right, let's move to center field.
Man, talk about the names at center field. I'm not even thinking about some of the more recent ones. There's some old ones that like I got stuck on. And so I'll give two honorable mentions and then tell you my biggest one. The honorable mentions are Mickey Mantle is one, and then two is Ty Cobb, who is probably one of the best Tigers of all time. He was kind of the best at the beginning. He was a little bit of a jerk, apparently, but whatever. He kind of played dirty, but the guy was
I'm pretty sure
incredible at what he did.
Era played a little dirty.
Maybe, yeah. But I think I'll go with Joe DiMaggio as like my best center fielder. Do you know that he has I think still an unbroken record of 56-game hit streak in 1941?
It was phenomenal. I'm trying to remember who was it that threatened it here recently. I don't think it was Ichiro Suzuki, but yeah, I mean, that's incredible. And I don't know if he benefited from this or if it was difficult, but Joe DiMaggio was incredible while always being in the shadow of Mickey Mantle.
Right. The guy played in the shadows, but still and that's just, I mean, he was all-star so many times. Simon and Garfunkel is it them that wrote the song?
You're the music guy, so that's probably in your category, but it sounds right.
Oh, who is it? Isn't it like, Where'd You Go, Joe DiMaggio?
Yeah.
Lonely Hearts. Whatever.
Oh man, we should have done best baseball song.
Yeah.
Well, there's not really a doubt. John Mellencamp, put me in, coach. I'm ready to play. Anyway, love it, Joe DiMaggio. Here's my favorite, and in my opinion, the best all-time center fielder, Ken Griffey Jr.
Yes.
I think it's almost inarguable that he has the sweetest, most beautiful swing of all time, coming from the left side of the plate. I could just watch 30 minutes of silent motion of his swing. It was so beautiful. It's hard, you don't want to put the asterisks on these things, the what ifs, but man, if he doesn't have crippling injuries his last 10 years, he probably sets the all-time record in so many categories. Still, he and Willie Mays are the only major leaguers to ever hit more than 600 home runs and win more than 10 Gold Gloves. Ken Griffey Jr. has started more all-star games than anyone else. And the thing about Ken Griffey Jr. was he brought fun to baseball, the backwards hat.
Yes.
He treated baseball like it was a game, and there was a youthful energy. Like, he was incredible, but it was just like, that's a guy who seemed to understand that he woke up every day and his office was the baseball field, and he loved it.
Yeah, the dude has a video game after him that I loved to play. Dude, Super Nintendo days.
Man, me and my brothers would play Ken Griffey Jr. baseball. We took a RV trip all the way out west, and we played it for 20 hours straight.
Yes, the home run derby is the best thing in the world.
I know.
And if you play with Ken Griffey Jr. in the home run derby, you're bound to win. That dude would hit so many home runs in that game. It was incredible.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, two more positions left. Right field. Who's your all-time great?
Whew, again, so many. So I'll give, again, two honorable mentions. One, Al Kaline, because he passed last year, and so many Tiger fans are remembering him in the past week or so. I think it hits a little harder when you don't have baseball to kind of reflect on, so you kind of have to just reflect on the past like that. Controversial pick, but I think he needs to be mentioned, is Pete Rose, one of the best players. He got caught up in all that junk that got him in trouble, but had nothing to do with his play or cheating on the field.
1,000 hits.
Yes. That's incredible. And so but then I will go with Hank Aaron as my right fielder of all time.
All right. Well, right field has no argument for me. My all-time right fielder, the home run king, Hank Aaron, similar to Jackie Robinson in the South, chasing Babe Ruth's home run record, the pressure there, the understory of what he was doing. So phenomenal. Hank Aaron, such a distinguished gentleman, and even today, kind of the spokesman for Major League Baseball. All right, we've got two positions left, the DH and the pitcher. Who you got playing DH for your all-time great team?
I went between two. My allegiance is going to kind of, I'm going to go with it. I'm still kind of in between. Miggy Cabrera, who's still playing baseball with the Tigers. He's probably one of the best. If you just put him at DH throughout his whole season, his whole time, and not just play first base, he could probably be the best DH. But I think, you could also put Big Poppy in there, Ortiz, as being like probably the best DH. I mean, because the DH is also a little bit newer, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the
Well,
American or the National League doesn't even have it.
In the
So it's
all-time
like,
greatest lineup, anyone can play DH.
yeah. So there you go. Who's your DH?
For my DH in my all-time lineup, even though he's a starting center fielder right now, I think it's possible that we are watching, when baseball comes back, we are watching the greatest player, all-around player to ever play. Mike Trout, to me, he's playing for a woeful team. He doesn't get the prime time because he's on the West Coast and because the Angels have befuddledly not taken advantage of this incredible talent. But I think Mike Trout is I think he is without any argument right now. But I think in time, if he continues for the next 5 or so years at his current level, we're looking at the greatest baseball player to ever play in Mike Trout. I know it's a big words, but man.
Then if you do that, I mean, like this could be debatable in the sense that like you have Aaron Judge out there who's like so much, I mean, not so much younger, but he's like coming up at the heels of Mike Trout and probably could surpass him at some point too. So got a lot of great players that are chomping at the bit.
I feel a little bit like you said, Aaron Judge, because Emily started watching, but
no, the guy's incredible. I mean, I know he kind of slumped last year maybe, but like whatever he did.
It's so weird to see him at the plate. He's such a giant. He's
so big. He's so big.
I'm sorry. Is that the starting center for the New York Knicks batting for the Yankees? All right, great, man. We're going to finish it on our starting pitcher, and I'm going to go first since I made you go first every time. And this is more about his peak. But I think if I had to give the ball to one person to take the mound, and if you put everyone in their peak and I had to send them out, I would send Pedro Martinez to the mound. He was virtually unhittable for many years. In 1997, when he won the Cy Young, not unanimously, ironically, which he did 2 other times. He threw 13 complete games that year and had a 1.90 ERA, 305 strikeouts. Some people will remember the 7th inning of the 2003 ALCS, where the Red Sox make the unthinkable comeback. Eventually, Aaron Boone hits a moonshot off of Tim Wakefield to win the World Series. But let's not forget that the next year, Pedro came back and threw 7 hitless innings, and then the Red Sox broke their own streak. So if I had to send one person to the mound, there's a lot of guys, incredible pitchers, Randy Johnson, Nolan Ryan, Roger Clemens, Greg Maddux, but Pedro Martinez was just utterly unhittable from the mid-90s to the mid-2000s.
That's a really hard one to beat. Actually, like the MLB network through Facebook, actually, they had his game where I think he threw 17 strikeouts against the Yankees. Like, just can you imagine that? I mean, like the dude is unhittable. I can't compete with that pick because I think that you picked it before I did. And maybe that's why he went first. But I'll throw out some names. Just you've said too, Greg Maddux, I think, was the guy I was going to pick just because of his stuff in the mid 90s. But then also Randy Johnson, wasn't he left-handed as well?
He was a 6'10" lefty.
Yes.
And if you want a good laugh, YouTube John Kruk, Randy Johnson All-Star game when Randy throws a 97-mile-an-hour fastball behind him, because Randy got a little wild sometimes. And then John Kruk's reaction for the rest of the at-bat was one of the classic moments ever in All-Star baseball history.
He was intimidating. And so, but I will add someone as a all-time closer. Mariano Rivera I know I pick a lot of Yankees, but this dude, like, he gets the nickname Sandman for a reason. Like, the dude puts you to sleep. And so every time that guy would come in, you know that the Yankees are going to win. That's probably why they won so many times, was because they had such a bullpen that could bring people in to relieve their starters. And that's one of my grievances with the Tigers back when they were actually good and like competing for championships, is they never had the bullpen that could compete with people like the Yankees. And so it's like, that guy, I think, needs some notoriety, because
the reason I didn't put relief pitcher on our list is I don't think there is any legitimate argument for anyone else in all of baseball history to fill the slot of relief pitcher other than Mariano. I mean, Dennis Eckersley, early 80s, early 90s, famous, so good. Trevor Hoffman, really good, but no one was as unhittable and as stone cold in the postseason as Mariano Rivera.
So yeah,
he was a beast.
Yeah.
All right, man. I love your lineup. I love talking about lineups. Love to hear what your guys' favorite lineups are, whether you're watching live or on the replay. Hey, we're going to jump into a couple of quick things here to wrap up our show. You know, when you think about baseball, baseball has inspired some incredible movies. And so we're not going to do a big, long list of movies, but maybe, Matt, give me an honorable mention, your favorite baseball movie, and then what's your favorite baseball movie of all time?
Oh, man, this was a hard one. There's some good ones. And even as you posted this, like, people kind of responded even last night about some really great movies that I had like not thought of right away. But I have to mention A League of Their Own as being like one of the, because baseball being such a male dominated sport, that softball is also out there. I mean, even your daughter being able to play, we need to recognize like women in the sport. That is so great. And so that's a fun movie to kind of do that. And it has one of the most famous lines in it. My honorable mention, though, would be The Sandlot, because I grew up on that movie when our teachers in school couldn't think of anything else for us to do. For whatever reason, they'd always throw on The Sandlot. And I fell in love with it. And plus, being about baseball, it's just I think it's the youthful magic of the sport, and just how kids can like rally around this, and the days when you just would go out and like come back in the evening, you wouldn't stay at home, you'd play around the ball field. So that's my honorable mention. But I would have to say my best baseball movie, the one I grew up on, the one that is full of like the magic of baseball, both in the sport but also kind of the aura that it is A Field of Dreams. And so,
classic.
Man, I can't.
Costner,
I mean,
and he was dynamite.
Well, and even like really the thing that got me, I think, more than anything was like the speech that, James Earl Jones' character said in the end, and just his like reference of like America's through the years have rolled on, but the one consistent in all of it is baseball, and like that's one of the best speeches ever.
Well, to put it in perspective, A Field of Dreams, a baseball movie, a sports movie, was nominated in 1989 for for 3 different Oscars, including Best Picture. And that says something, because usually niche movies like sports movies don't get the broad acclaim. But it says something. It's hard to argue with A Field of Dreams. I'm going to actually mention a couple of quick honorable mentions. First of all, Trouble with the Curve. It's more recent, but Clint Eastwood, Amy Adams, Justin Timberlake. I love that movie. You've got this kind of it bridges old school generation baseball, new school. The daughter. The father-daughter relationship, and that's probably just my own
that gets
life
you a
experience. Yeah, it just kind of it connects with where I'm at in life. Also, relatively modern, Moneyball with Brad Pitt, kind of telling the story of the Oakland Athletics, the small market team that's competed with the big market and kind of made metrics and computers part of modern baseball. And I know some people love it and hate it, but analytics are part of all major sports now.
But definitely about baseball, man. And like, and just to see like the story of that, a guy from, I think it was Yale, I think, or something, like just having such influence over the game, like it just crosses boundaries of like jocks and nerds, brings them together, you know, in that. And so I love that movie.
Yeah. And it gave hope for everyone who wasn't a, Yankees, Dodgers, Red Sox fan, that their team might someday have a chance at win. But my favorite baseball movie. You gave it your honorable mention. Same here. You're killing me, Smalls.
Yes.
I must have watched Sandlot 20 or 25 times as a kid. Jenny the Jet. I mean, the whole thing. You're right. It just took me back to little old Oliver Springs in Tennessee,
Yes.
East Tennessee, playing on our little dirt baseball fields, my buddies. I love Sandlot, and it just creates such nostalgia.
Man, I can't wait for my son to watch that when he's ready.
Yeah.
Because I think there's it's not just baseball, right? It's the story of growing up and with friends and just the bond that they create through that.
Yeah.
And like how that lasts through years, and just like that stuff, like that's gold stuff right there. And that's a lot
I
of
love
things.
the post-scene credits too,
Yeah.
with Wendy Peppercorn and what's his name get married and have 8 kids. It's so classic. All right, let's close out. Man, I miss baseball. I think all baseball people miss baseball. But man, there is something special about going to the ballpark. Riley, if you were on earlier in the show, she just talked about how magical it is. You smell the grass, the crack of the bat, the concessions, the 7th inning stretch. Man, it's just something special. What's your favorite? What do you miss about going to the ballpark right now? What's the thing that you want to do when you get back? What's maybe your favorite ballpark experience or ballpark you've ever been to?
Yeah, some of my favorite times is like smaller parks, even like the Smokies and stuff, where you get some of that more intimate feel of the game, or like a Vols game where you feel kind of that old school thing. But at the same time, going to some of the big league parks have been one of like Emily and my favorite thing to do. We took a trip once and got to go to a bunch of different ballparks. We have a goal in life to get to everyone together and buy a hat. And so I have a couple of ones. I mean, one, I remember, I think it was Michael Douglas was talking about Wrigley being his favorite. And honestly, walking up the ramp and seeing Wrigley for the first time, like you get a flood of history, like feelings. It's kind of weird, and just kind of just to know that how long that place has been there and how many teams have played in that place. That was one. I think going to Comerica Park, where the Tigers play for the first time a few years ago, that was big just because of the history there. But I'll tell you, my favorite time was Emily had gone to was going to a conference in San Francisco, and I was able to go with her. And just happenstance, we were looking around to figure out things to do, and we found tickets, I think through StubHub or something, to a Giants game. Well, it was in the postseason, and I guess I did know it, but I didn't fully recognize what game it was. But it turned out that it was like game 3, I think, of the NLCS against the Cards. And so later on, the Giants, I think, won the World Series this year. But we're like up in the upper stands, and so like I go down to I think a bathroom or get food, I can't remember. But in some ballparks, I don't know if they do this everywhere, but if a guy's at the plate, like they won't let you go up the stands. Like you have to stay and wait. And so the Giants had like the bases loaded, I think. And I don't know if it was Buster Posey or one of the other guys, but like he cracked this like double and like scored like 2 or 3 runs. And so for me to get back up to my seats, I went through a sea of people like celebrating. And I bet I probably high-fived or hugged 7 different people that I like, this is my like first time in San Francisco. And so I'm just like loving on people. It's just one of the coolest things, because also it was like sunset over the bay. And a lot of the stadiums, you get to see the skyline and just see the city kind of in its seasons. And man, that was the coolest experience to celebrate with a bunch of people that I had no idea who they were. And then to see the city in just kind of this new light over this game that I've loved. So that's probably my favorite time.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
I think about a couple of things. So this is kind of a fun fact for me that my kids don't really care about, but I'll tell the audience out there. But I actually got to play in college on one of the only 2 remaining actively used fields that Babe Ruth played on. Wow. So in Major League Baseball, the only active field that Babe Ruth played on is Fenway. And in Chattanooga, there's a little stadium, the Chattanooga Lookouts, which is the Cincinnati Reds minor league team. They don't play there anymore, but a college team still use it. In college, I would play at the old Ingalls Stadium, where the center field's like 435 feet deep. It's so huge. But that was one of at the time, Yankee Stadium was still in commission. It was one of the only fields left where Babe Ruth played. So that was fun. I think a couple of fun memories. Shea Stadium, I was watching the Mets play back in grade school when the sprinklers came on, and we made Sports Center because like the sprinklers came on and they had to cancel the game because they couldn't get the sprinklers off for like 15 minutes. The field's just getting saturated. You can probably YouTube that one. But I tell you recently, you mentioned minor league ballparks. Man, there's no doubt seeing the Big Green Monster and in Boston, bucket list, the Ivy and Wrigley. What's not on the bucket list is Tropicana Field in Tampa. It is the worst place ever to watch a baseball game.
What is that place, man?
It is like
so bad.
It's like somebody built a warehouse designed for meat packing and then put a diamond in it and some seats and said, let's play baseball here. I mean, I get it. It's indoors. It's air conditioned because it's South Florida and it's hot. But it is the most sterile. It's not fun. No offense to my Rays fans out there. I enjoyed going to the games, but it's the worst place ever to watch a game. But maybe my most favorite baseball memory recently, and this is just the whole kid thing coming into it. My daughter had just been dying to go to a Cincinnati baseball Reds game. So we went and saw the Reds and the Braves play at the new SunTrust Stadium. And by the way, I've seen the Braves play in all three of their Atlanta stadiums, Fulton County, Turner Field, and now SunTrust, which makes me feel old that I've went through 3 different fields in one city. But so I intentionally got seats next to the Reds bullpen, and we're sitting there watching the game. By the way, the new Reds field, they designed it to be like a big minor league ballpark. So it's such a great family experience.
Yeah.
And the Reds players just kind of goofed off with my kids the whole time, threw Riley a ball, threw all my kids a ball. And man, it was just a fun experience. And so as a dad, sitting there watching the game, watching some of the greatest players ever right now play, Freddie Freeman, all of those guys. But then having the players interact with Riley, pretty special moment.
Yeah, that's so good. And it gets to that heartstring piece of it, right? Of just the history and the family aspect and I don't know. There's just something about it that I think that's what makes this kind of also nostalgic, but also magical is those things. Because it's not just the sport, right? It's not just the game itself, but it's all that's around it. And so I think that's really cool.
Yeah. Baseball's so unique. It's got such a long history. Well, man, Matt, I can't wait till we get baseball back. But man, thanks for joining me to talk a little baseball today.
Yeah, man, it's been such a blast. It really got me thinking about it more. I'm probably going to go find some YouTube clips of something, just to feel that urge of watching some games. But maybe when we get through all this, we'll just kind of wrap everybody up and just go. Let's just all go to a game together and just sit and be there.
I'm for that. I'm for that. Well, man, thanks so much for Matt Scheuneman joining me today on Fireside Chats with Brad. Appreciate you tuning in for this bonus episode. If you're watching live or on YouTube or on the replay, feel free to share it with your friends. Want to provide some content and conversations in these unique times to encourage us, maybe cause us to laugh and reminisce on sweet things like baseball. This Thursday, tomorrow actually be dropping a new episode of Fireside Chats, either Thursday or Friday. Stay tuned for that. But until next time, take care.